My name is Julian Gordy, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm currently serving as president of the Nashville chapter of Americans United for the Separation of Church and State. And at our regular board meeting tonight, we have a guest speaker who will be introduced to you in just a few minutes. We thought it might be a good idea, in case some of you are not aware of what Americans United is and what it does, just to give you a very brief glimpse of that. It's Americans United was founded about 75 years ago and is still the only organization that in the country that's dedicated solely to defending the separation of church and state, to make sure that people have the right to practice their religious faith, and that people who don't want a religious faith have a right not to practice religious faith. The vision of the organization is a nation where everybody is free to believe or not as they choose, and where people do not impinge on the rights and the lives of other people on account of their own personal religion. We believe that builds a strong democracy, and to that end, Americans United is a non-partisan, not-for-profit organization that does education and advocacy on behalf of everyone in the country. So sometimes we're in the courts, and sometimes we're trying to affect public policy in the legislature, and sometimes we're out there on the streets trying to make sure that the voices of those who are not being heard are being heard. If you'd like to know more, here's a couple of ways you can do that. One is to go to our website, which is Nashville-AU.org. Nashville-AU.org. You could also write us, and that address, email address is info@nashville-au.org. And you could also give a call to our phone number. Just to note that everybody in this chapter is a volunteer, so you'll probably get an opportunity to leave a message and someone will call you back. The number is 615-208-4833. 615-208-4833. I'm going to introduce to you now, those of you who might not know her, Mirabeth Stetler, who is does more work than anybody else at Americans United, and has for a long time, and keeps us all in line and marching in the right direction. And she will introduce our guest tonight. Here we go.
Thank you for that introduction, Julian. We invited Olivia Hill here today, this evening. We've asked her because she's an activist. She does a lot of work with LGBTQ, women's rights, and a whole bunch of other stuff. You can go to her website as well, or Facebook page, and see exactly what all she does. A Navy veteran, Olivia served in the engineering division for 10 years. She saw combat in Desert Storm and gained unique expertise in electrical engineering. So she used those skills to do a number of jobs, and some really high-powered jobs. And she's this year's Nashville Pride Grand Marshal, and is running for Nashville Metro Council, Metro Council Member-at-Large, and is in the process of having a book published. So Olivia, thank you so much for being here, and tell us what you want to tell us.
So my name is Olivia Hill. I want to say thank you. I'm going to try to pivot between the two. I have a room full of people here, and then I've got the Zoom link over here. So if you see me kind of going back and forth, I'm trying to make sure that everyone is included and everybody feels seen. My name is Olivia Hill, and I was born and raised right here in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was assigned male at birth. I felt the two questions I always get asked all the time is, when did you decide to make the change? When did you decide to be a woman? When did you decide to make the big change? And the answer is I never didn't make a change. I always felt like me from as far back in it, every memory. I dressed at home, I wore dresses, I played with makeup, I curled my hair. I did normal things that most girls would do and some things that boys would do. And I didn't feel like there was any difference between me and anybody else. I saw myself as the same as my mother and my grandmother, who basically raised me, until age 10. And then at age 10, I wanted to start wearing dresses to school. Because in Miss Harris's class in 5th grade, we got an opportunity to sign up for the variety show. And I signed up to be Minnie Pearl.
Oh.
And my teacher, Miss Harris, allowed me to have that role. And I went home, I was all excited, and mom made me a little hat, and she took and glued some dried flowers, and then took some index cards and some white out and covered out the lines and cut out the little price tag for 99 cents and everything, and had me all set to go. And I said, but I need a dress. And she said, honey, you can't wear a dress to school. And I thought, it's okay. It's okay. I can figure this out. I'll wear some overalls or something. I'll make this work. And so I stayed up late a couple of nights in a row, listened to the Grand Ole Opry, so I could hear her and write down some of her jokes and tell some of the things so I could be just like her. And I was standing behind the royal blue velvet curtains at school on stage, and they were getting ready to go up. And I walked out on stage, and I just proudly looked for my mom, who was sitting up front, of course, and I said, howdy, and fully expected to hear something back. And it was total silence. The entire crowd is looking at me like, why in the world is this little boy on stage dressed as a woman and trying to act like a woman? And I started to cry, and I ran off stage, and I sat in the hallway, and my mom got up and ran and hugged me, and she's like, we just need to go home. And we went home. And that's when I got to talk that I had to be a boy, and I had to dress like a boy and do boy things. And mom did all she could do to sign me up for football, baseball, basketball, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, and every other manly thing she could think of to try to fix what she thought was her broken child. It was the same time that my father kind of came back into our life, because he left when I was about 1.5 years old, to try to give me some male figure, because that had to be the problem. But then mom sent me to a psychiatrist in Green Hills. I went every Wednesday for 2 years to teach me that I had to be a boy and like boy things and like cars and trucks and trains and do boy stuff. That was the start of me feeling like I was broken. Until that point, I just felt like a normal kid, and I felt like me. I didn't feel like a boy. I didn't feel like a girl. I felt like me. I dated several times throughout high school. Every girl that I dated for a long time broke up with me because I was just too feminine. And then back in the 70s, there was really 2 choices. You could either be a straight man or you were gay. That was the only choices that they were. And so someone who dressed nicely and pressed their clothes and showed attention to detail and things were just considered gay. So I continued through life. And then finally at age 20, I decided, you know what, I know what I could do. I can go in the military, and the Navy can fix me, because they fixed Richard Gere, an officer and a gentleman, and he was broken too. And I know they could fix me because I felt broken. And so I went down to Hardy Mall. Those of you who remember, had been in Nashville long enough to remember the old Hardy Mall. I went down there and I signed up, and they put me right in the Navy, and I went to a Great Lakes boot camp. And about the 3rd week of boot camp, I had was commonly referred to in the military and the Navy. It's called a blanket party. And that's where, when you're asleep, they come and throw a blanket over you, and they have 2 or 3 people on either side hold it down, and all 90+ people come and hit you. Had my nose broke, had my jaw busted, I cracked a couple of ribs, and I was bruised up pretty bad. I had that happen a few times until I decided that I had to do something to man myself up. And I had to figure out a way to be safe, just for me. And I had to hide this side of me to be safe. And that's when I developed this voice. And I tried to be as manly and as macho as I possibly could. And I survived boot camp. And I went to my first ship, the USS Taylor, which was stationed in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba at the time. And I basically just found the biggest alpha guy in my division and picked a fight, knowing that hopefully that would give me enough street cred that people would kind of leave me alone. And I always managed to surround myself with alpha people to keep myself safe and keep me fitting in. The entire time, I still felt like me on the inside. And occasionally, whenever I got time, I would get dressed in women's clothes and just sit around and just be me. It was no sexual anything about it. It just made me feel like myself. I ended up getting married. I have two small, or they're not small. I have two children. My son's 34, my daughter's 33. I have 4 grandkids, and I continued through life, and I continued to be me. I was in the Navy for 10 years. After I got out of the Navy, I came back to Nashville and got a job at Vanderbilt. I started out shoveling coal and removing ash from the boilers, and worked my way up. Along the way, I held every single position in my division. And by trade, I'm a plumber, pipe fitter, welder, high voltage electrician, diesel mechanic, jet engine mechanic, boiler specialist, union shop steward, control specialist, and I design a control system that's currently running Vanderbilt power plant right now. So I overcompensated with trying to be this great man. But then in February the 12th, 2015 is when I tell people my egg cracked, and that's when my mom passed. And I no longer could hide me anymore. And I was tired of trying to hide me. I was tired of the lie. I couldn't do it anymore. And so I decided that I was gonna be me, and I didn't know how. It took me a good 2 years before I finally got the courage and enough research to figure out what my process was going to be. And then Thanksgiving weekend of 2017, I sat in my floor in my living room at my house, and I took my first dose of estrogen, and I sat there and just cried. And I thought, I don't know what this is going to cost me. I don't know how this is going to work, but I can't live the lie anymore. I've got to be me. And so I started the process. I met with doctors, and that's where I learned a lot too. So many people don't understand about the trans community and the things that we go through. And so many people these days, I think that's the reason why there's so much about the drag shows, is because I think so many people see us as men in wigs, and they don't fully, truly understand everything that a trans person goes through in a process of transitioning. So I used to run the power plant at Vanderbilt University, and I started taking estrogen. I went to, my endocrinologist and started getting that process going. To be able to start taking estrogen, you have to go see a therapist and get an assessment letter. It takes a minimum of 6 to 8 visits that insurance doesn't cover because there's no code for that. You're going for the entire process is to be assessed to say that you have gender dysphoria. So until you're assessed saying that you have gender dysphoria, there's really nothing wrong with you. And if there's nothing wrong with you, then insurance doesn't cover it. And so that's all out of pocket for your own self, for the trans person. And then once that happens, then you can start estrogen or testosterone, depending on which way you're going. Then once you get that process going, then you've got to go back to a different therapist and start over again to get another assessment letter to be able to put your name on a waiting list to have surgery. And that takes a minimum of 6 to 8 visits. Some take 6 to 8 months. It depends on the therapist that you go see and what they think your progress is. And so that just kind of is the journey. It starts out so slow, and so many people think that we just walk into the doctor and say, I want to take estrogen, and they just write you a script and you just start taking estrogen and you start wearing women's clothes, and then voila, there you are. The first 2 years of estrogen, the process it was about 3 months into my journey. I was on estrogen about 3 months, and I got called in one night for a steam leak on campus. And I went down the tunnel to close the steam valve, and I couldn't get the valve closed. And I thought I've closed this valve 100 times. Why in the world can I not close this valve? And so I had to go back all the way to the plant through the tunnels. I went back to the plant, got a valve brace, because I was still new enough in my transition that I had still enough male pride to ask anybody for help. And so I went back and got a pipe wrench and a valve wrench, and I came back and I finally got the valve closed. And I started doing some reading and researching, and that's one of the things that happens. Along the way, I lost every bit of my upper body strength within the first 3 to 4 months, almost all of it. I lost muscle mass throughout my entire body. And for some reason, I only put on weight just right here in the hips and thighs, buttocks area, just like right here. My skin is thinner, so I cut easier, I bruise easier. My pores are smaller, so I sweat less. But because I sweat less, we have drier skin. So we have to moisturize all the time. My red blood cell count's about half of what it used to be. My lung capacity is 3/4 of what it used to be. But I tell everybody my two big bookends, the things that really rocked my world, and I call the two bookends of my transition, was the very first thing that happened to me. And that was the loss of my male privilege that I had no idea that I possessed. And it hit me like a brick. Because I thought that because I was a plumber, pipe fitter, welder, high voltage electrician, I thought all these things was because of me, because of my hard work. I was one of the first people to the plant every day. I got to work at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I stayed till 7, 8, or 9 o'clock at night. And I went to different contractors and said, hey, will you teach me how to weld? And went to different other people and said, hey, what is this in electrical? And how does that work? And what does this mean? And I tried everything I could do to try to move up. And I thought all that effort was because of me. And then I realized after my transition that as a woman, I have to work 3 times as hard to only advance half as much. And that number one, I'm not sure Vanderbilt would have hired me as a woman. And number two, that late Saturday night on an outage when the contractor was there doing some repair work for us, and I asked him to teach me how to weld, he would have told me to go sit in my office. Instead of, yeah, here's the stuff, go get it, get my hood, come here, I'll show you what to do. Instead of just teaching me. And it has absolutely amazed me about so much. It has really just opened my eyes to so many things about how many men have the audacity to just walk up and correct me in public as a woman. That in my past never happened in my entire life. I've never in my life had a man walk up to me and say, you know, ma'am, you know, you're not supposed to be doing that, or you shouldn't do that, or you should park a little better, or the way you park, you don't allow this, that, and the other. And I've never been talked down to the way that I have since I transitioned. And I think that I have the same brain that I have, or at least I thought I did until I went to an endocrinologist about a year or two on estrogen. And I had my appointment with her and she asked me, she said, Olivia, how's everything going? And I said, not too good at all. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, something's wrong with my brain. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, I used to look at this bottle of water and think of this bottle of water and nothing but this bottle of water. Now I look at this bottle of water and I worry about the plastic and what it's doing to our environment. Yeah, I remember I unplugged the curling iron. Yes, I remember I closed the garage door. Do you think Julie thinks I think she's fat? Because yesterday I said her jeans were tight, but I meant they were tight because she looked good, not because she's fat. You know, she's about that new guy Mark online. And now Mark's going to think she's fat because that's just what she's going to think. Because I said her, I left the clothes in the dryer. And now I'm trying to be some good liberal and care about the environment. I left the clothes in the dryer and she starts dying laughing at me. And I'm like, why in the world are you laughing at me? And she said, honey, it's called female multitasking. And it's what women do. It's why women are smarter than men. And it's the one thing of pre-transition that I absolutely miss the most, that I wish I still possessed the ability to do. And that's the ability to take a problem and say, you know what? I'm just not going to deal with you right now. And the thought never go through my brain again. And that no longer works. A lot of the women that I've dated over the years used to make fun of me because when I would go to bed, I would raise the sheet up, I would get in, I'd roll over on my left side, pull the sheet over, and I'd be asleep in a minute, maybe 2. If I had a really stressful day, I may lay there for that 3 or 4 minutes, but within 5 minutes tops, I'm asleep. Now it takes a bunch of TikTok videos, maybe a couple of stupid games or 2 or so, a couple of emails and an hour before I can finally get my brain turned off. And then anything that I try to set aside early in the day wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then when it does that, it brings its friend guilt and anxiety with you going, why didn't you deal with that? You know, you should have done that. You shouldn't have said that to Julie. Why did you say that? Now she feels bad because of what you said. And then the brain just goes. And that's why we just go, which is normally why we get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, just go ahead and start laundry because we're already awake and we're doing things. And so it's really changed me in how I see folks in the world. And when you can see how much privilege I lost, and how much privilege I still have as a white woman. And it really makes me look at everything. But so many people see trans folks as just men in wigs or you know, whatever. And it's the reason why you very rarely hear anybody speak of trans men. Because the two big things that trans women usually their bookends is the loss of their male privilege and the female brain. It's the two biggest things. And usually when you talk to most trans men that have transitioned from female to male, their two biggest complaints is they gain male privilege that they don't want. And they lose their ability to cry. And I had no idea how much relief and how much better it is to have a good rainy Sunday afternoon, ugly cry where you just sit there and you're like, why did she say that? And it's a better release than punching a bag for 20 minutes. But as men, we were raised that is bad and that you can't cry and you shouldn't cry, and that means that you're weak. It's been funny to me that as I transition, most men will go out of their way to hurt another man's feelings to his face. And they will look at another man and call him fat or stupid or ugly or whatever. And kind of, well, could you forget that? You're stupid. And then the man walks away and they're like, you know what? We need 3 more like that, Jim. He's the hardest working guy we've got. He's the first one to show up to work. He's always the last one to leave. Oh, there he is. Did you shower today? You stink. You know, and so men do that to each other because they want to appear a little stronger. They want to be macho. They want to feel tough. And then when they give each other stuff back and forth, they prove that they can take it as long as they can also prove that they can give it. And they want to appear tough. They don't want to appear weak, and they don't want to appear gay. Women are exactly the same, but opposite. And a woman will walk up to another woman and go, oh my gosh, Julie, I cannot believe that you wore purple and green today and pulled it off. I don't know of another woman that could do that. You always look so put together. You always just spot on, and you just look amazing. It's so good to see you. And then as soon as she walks away, they're like, we got to break into her closet, put animals on her clothes because that stupid woman wore purple and green again today. I can't believe she did that. Because we don't want to be perceived as mean or as bitchy. And we always try to be soft and nice and get along with everybody. And it's amazing to me of how the difference is and how things have shifted. Men will go out of their way to be mean to each other, and women will go out of their way to be nice to each other's face. Men are honest behind your back, and most women are honest kind of behind your back. So it's kind of funny how that all kind of comes together. Mansplaining. I don't know that I'll ever get used to that. Of you ask some people what time it is and they'll tell you exactly how to build a watch, you know? And so I would love to, I'm not sure where we're at, what time. I think we're getting pretty close to my 30 minutes. I would love to open this up for any questions that anybody has there, anybody has here. And this is a free opportunity that you can ask me anything in the world you want. There's no offensive question you can't ask. You can ask me about me. You can ask me about my surgeries. You can ask me about anything in the world you want. Because to me, if you learn something from here and you take that with you and you tell somebody, and that person tells somebody, and that person tells somebody, then we've spread knowledge, and that's exactly how Amway got started, you know? Yes, sir.
Hi. This is for the edification of the House staff question. When you were going through your initial transitioning process, they, of course, did a bunch of blood work on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did they check for, this was before the starting the estrogens,
Mm-hmm.
Did they check for any abnormalities in the blood that would predispose it to clot too readily?
To what?
Did they look for any tendencies of the blood to clot too readily, because estrogens pose a risk of blood clots?
Yeah, no, they don't. What they do is they do monitor your blood levels for that, and that's one of the things. The average estrogen level of a cisgender woman is somewhere between 17 and 46. And usually on around day 9 or 10 of your cycle is when you're at the highest. As a trans woman, they keep our estrogen level at 250. And so we have to go for mammograms every single year. We have to be regularly checked for blood and check things. So it's one of the things they stay on top. That's why we go to an endocrinologist instead of just a regular physician. So they can keep track of all of that and your blood sugar and things that's going on. Because literally, I honestly went through full puberty in my mid-50s. And every single thing that a woman goes through in puberty, I went through in my mid-50s at the same time running a multi-billion-dollar power plant. So the days you remember when you were like 12 and 13 and you wanted to sit on the floor and cry and eat chocolate and then mad because you were sitting in the floor and crying and eating chocolate and then crying because you were mad because you were sitting in the floor eating and mad and your emotions are all over the place. I went through all of that every day and ran a power plant and managed a 24-hour operation. And I managed the plant, the maintenance group, the high voltage electrician, the controls group, and all the contractors.
Are there any questions on?
Has anybody got any questions here on a Zoom?
Yeah, just
Uh,
type it into.
yes. One question is, genetically, are you XX or XY or something else?
I honestly do not know. I have never had that tested. And to be honest with you, it really doesn't matter because I am who I am. And that wouldn't change my opinion of who I am and how I feel. So, but I don't know.
I have a question. It seems abundantly clear to me from my children and grandchildren that there's a lot more acceptance now than maybe when you were experiencing this. But much of what you talk about, the medical processes and so forth, wouldn't be any different. But I wonder what advice you would give to a young person who was experiencing what you did when you did.
That's the biggest,
Could you repeat the question?
yeah, that's the, what?
Repeat the question.
Oh, in case anybody missed a question, the question is what advice would you have for younger people that are going through the process of feeling like they feel when you felt like the way you felt at that young age? And it's a very easy answer with a very complicated answer. So many people see puberty blockers as something that is really, truly horrible and that it does a lot that's bad to children. And it really doesn't. All it does is it takes puberty and puts it on pause. And then at age 18, if that child decides, you know what? I don't really feel like that anymore. And I was really wrong. There's a 92 or 93% of all people that feel like they're trans at that age end up being trans. That's who they are. There's a few select that don't. And so when they take puberty blockers, it just pushes pause. And people say, oh, there's these horrible side effects and these horrible things that happen to a child. And it's just not true. One of the things, and when I was in the Navy, my last duty station, Naval Air Station Millington, I was undercover investigations. And one of the things that I did was all the investigations that the officers didn't want to do because I was enlisted. So I took care of all the things that the officers didn't want to deal with. And so we ended up with all the suicides. And you want to know what the number one cause or the number one method of suicide in the military is? Tylenol.
Whoa.
Because it's readily available. It's super easy to get. You take a handful of them. It takes 2 to 3 days before it to cause your liver to completely shut down. Once you've taken it, there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. It's a ticking time bomb. Within a couple of 2 to 3 days, you're gone. And it is by far worse for you than anything anybody can take for a puberty blocker. There's almost no one that does any kind of surgeries on small children. There are a few trans men that have had top surgery when they're like 16 and 17 years old, but they're pretty well grown and they've already been through an awful lot of process to get to that point. So the people saying that they're mutilating children and they're castrating children and they're sterilizing children and they're doing all these, that's just simply not true. It's just simply not true. So thank you for that question. I greatly appreciate it. Yes, sir.
I have maybe 2 questions.
Okay.
You mentioned
the coincidence or coinciding events of the passing of your mother
Uh-huh.
and your decision to pursue the life that you had been thinking of.
Uh-huh.
Do you think there was anything about that that was? Well, what was it about that you think was the catalyst?
I didn't want to disappoint my mother.
I
She
thought-
raised me as a true Southern gentleman. I knew which fork and knife to use before I was age 5. And that's how I was raised. And I, once, you know, as you're growing up, when you get to be around 8 or 9 years old, you start to really kind of question your parents, and you're like, is the Easter Bunny real?
Junior.
You know, and you start to kind of question things. Is Santa Claus really bringing all these presents, or is this mom and dad? So around 8 or 9 or 10, you start to kind of question that. But at age 10, you still believe a pastor, a doctor, a police officer, and a teacher. Whatever they say is pretty much the gospel, and they can't lie because of who they are. And so when a doctor tells me that I have to be a boy and I have to do boy things, I'm thinking there must be something wrong with my head on the inside, because I honestly felt like me on the inside, but this doctor told me that I wasn't. And so that was the start of me feeling like I was broken. And so it wasn't until my mother passed that I finally gained the courage to say, I can't live this life anymore. I don't have to do this for her anymore. And
I have a follow-up on that.
okay.
Was your mother deeply religious?
We, and this is in my book that I wrote, we were 100% religious to Woodmont Baptist Church Sunday morning service on TV on Channel 4. My grandmother used to always say that there are church people and then there's people that go to church. And she felt like a lot of people were church people. And so we watched church on TV so that we weren't associated with the people that showed up with their Cadillacs or their Gucci purses or whatever. We just got. And then as I started to grow older and as I, you know, expressed who I was and then became this broken child, is when I was thrust into Vacation Bible School, which is where I really started to feel even more broken, because everything that was spoken about, everything that was talked about was against me and who I felt, which is where the start of my walking away from the church. And it wasn't until I got much older that I came back.
Well, one final question along those lines.
Okay.
I know there are good people in every walk of life.
Absolutely.
Spectrum. We've got some of them here tonight that are supremely nice. But in general, how has your experience been when you have you ever been called to speak at churches, or would they consider that? Have you received treatment that you think is unfair?
I speak anywhere anyone will give me the opportunity to speak. I've spoken at Rotary clubs, churches. I speak at the Nashville Law School. I speak at the Tennessee Bar Association. In fact, I'm speaking there again on the 22nd. I'm speaking to Vanderbilt Medical School doctors. I'm speaking on the 21st to Austin Medical School second year doctors. I teach a class at Nashville Metro Police Academy. I speak anywhere I get an opportunity to speak, and I'm free because it educates people and it helps people understand the process. And my favorite is the police academy, because I pass a copy of my old driver's license around, and I teach an officer that sometimes people may look like me when they walk up to the window, and when they look at their driver's license, it may look like somebody else. And, excuse me. And then when they ask them a question, they may sound like this.
Yeah.
It doesn't make that person any less valid of who they are just because they're a little further, not as far as I am in my transition.
Got you. Well, you do a great job.
Yes, ma'am.
The question I have is about your IDs and driver's license and so on. Was it have you had your birth certificate and license and so on fixed
Everything has changed with the exception of my birth certificate, because I'm a disabled veteran, so I have my military ID has changed to female, my driver's license changed to female, my passport has changed to female. But Tennessee is the only state in the entire union that will not allow me to change my birth certificate. And the sole reason is because there are so many laws tied to the birth certificate. Because there's so many laws out there about bathroom usage and the drag bill that was just shot down, and there's so many things out there that are all tied to the birth certificate, and so they won't let that change. Now, I believe there's a couple of lawsuits against the state for that have been in place for around 4 years. So hopefully we can get some things. But to answer your question as well, yes, I've received a lot of hate, but I kind of use it as fuel. I was getting my nails done a couple of weeks ago, and I had a lady sit beside me, and we were just discussing things, and she was like, oh, well, how do you think God feels about how you've changed your body? And I said, I think God loves me pretty doggone well. And she's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, ma'am, you're wearing glasses. And she said, yes. I said, well, if you're really a religious person and you're a good Christian, then you understand that God gave us free will, and he gave you free will to go buy those glasses so you could find your way to church to hate me. And I went through, we continued to talk, and I discussed the whole thing about everything I went through, and the skin thinner and the shrunk and this, that, and yeah. That's the other thing. I shrunk 1.5 inches because the disc in between each one of the vertebrae is less on a woman than it is on a man. So, and then after it's over with, she was like, I am so sorry. And she hugged me, and I think I made some difference. I think the majority of the hate that we get out there right now is just lack of education and knowledge of the real process. And so I try to kind of push through some of that hate, and I try to get through that, to get to the other side, to try to educate some people, because the majority of the time, there's goodness on the other side. And so I try to use every opportunity I can to try to talk to people and educate people and just share me and my experience and my journey, and hope that we can be friendly on the other side. But no, I never say no to anybody of an opportunity to speak. My worst one was the Green Hills Rotary. That's when I was roughed up pretty there.
Really?
Yeah, I had some tough questions, but I had a good time. You know, I use it as an opportunity to just educate folks. Yes, sir.
When you were talking about laws that are connected to the birth certificates in
Uh-huh.
Tennessee a couple of minutes ago, you said that you were able to convert your driver's license to female.
Yes.
If you should have to re-up that license in case it gets suspended or something like that, you would need to have a birth certificate in order to do that.
Correct.
So how would they reconcile that?
I don't know that they can. And there's actually a new bill that went through the Senate, and I think it's waiting to go through the House. It's kind of sitting on hold right now. But will probably be picked up again next year. But there was a bill trying to force all trans people to change their identification based off of what is on your birth certificate, which means I'd have to change my driver's license back and put an M on it.
The only reason I brought that up is that by chance, I didn't realize that I had a suspended license 5 years ago.
Right.
And when I wanted to reinstate it, I had to go through I went through the Williamson County DMV. I had to actually produce a copy of my birth certificate,
Yes.
which unfortunately I didn't have. So since I wasn't born in the state of Tennessee, I had to contact the state of Illinois, which is where I was born,
Yes.
and have them send me a copy.
Right.
I think it cost me like $40 some.
Oh.
But until I had that in hand,
Correct.
I could not go back and apply for a replacement driver's license.
Right. Well, the way Tennessee current law is written, is one can change their gender marker on their driver's license if they have had sufficient treatment. And that's all it says.
What is sufficient treatment?
And I don't know a doctor out there that prescribes estrogen or testosterone for any trans person that will not write you a letter that says you have had sufficient treatment. So that's the way the law is written, to change a gender marker on your driver's license. But they won't let us change our birth certificate yet. But it's coming. It's gonna come. It's, yes, sir.
Okay, you said nothing's off limits, so. there we
Absolutely.
go.
Ask whatever you want.
I'll preface this question by saying I've got a family member who has transitioned from female to male.
Okay,
And this family member has really flourished in his new identity. His romantic involvement is with another man.
okay.
Can you speak to how that generally sorts out? I mean, when you transition, does your inclination for partners change
You
or?
ever known anybody that was left-handed?
Yeah,
You ever known a child that was left-handed and you try to put the marker in the right hand? It's like, honey, you need to learn to write this way because that's the way the whole world is. And they just keep using their left hand because you don't really get to pick which hand you use. And you don't get to pick who you fall in love with. And
okay,
whoever you're attracted to, whatever you fall in love with is what you're attracted to forever. And it doesn't matter how you transition. I was a cisgender, straight white man that dated women. And now I've transitioned, and so now I'm a lesbian trans woman. Because I still date women, I still attracted to women, I've always been attracted to women.
okay.
And
That
so,
did answer my question.
and so that doesn't usually track, whatever you're attracted to is what you're attracted to.
Okay.
Great answer about the left-handedness. I gotta remember that.
Yeah. And another thing I like to throw out is 1% of the people in the United States is trans. But 1% of the United States, actually a little less than 1% of the United States is Jewish. So if you've ever met someone who's Jewish, you've met somebody who's trans. Just because they didn't present and let you know that, you've met somebody.
Yeah,
But
I almost asked that question.
Yeah.
Do you know what percentage of the population?
yeah, it's right around 1%. It was 1% last time I looked at it. And I think it's a little over like 1.1 or 1.2. It's slowly growing. As people are starting to get more trust and more safety to come out. But here's the big one that really kind of kicked me is, you ever met anybody who's redheaded?
No.
So,
Yeah.
so 3% of the people in the United States are redheaded. 2.87% of the people in the United States are born intersex. And that's somebody who's born with both. And so if you've met somebody who's redheaded, you've met somebody who's intersex. And so if someone can be intersexed, and we all know that God doesn't make mistakes. So if someone can. I have no idea what that noise is. Sir, I said you didn't make mistakes.
Crossed my mind.
So, but so if someone can be intersex and they can be born with some form of both, then what do you think the chances of somebody's really kind of born here, but thinks and feels over here? Because we've all met very feminine men and we've all met very masculine women.
Sure.
So, I hope that answered your question. It was a little kind of around the block.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Go ahead.
Olivia, tell me about how, and this may have changed over time. I don't know how long you were at Vanderbilt.
26 years.
Through your transition and after, what kind of acceptance did you have from your colleagues there?
Can't legally say by law. I can tell you that I really tried everything that I could do to be prepared for any transphobia that I would have when I returned back from work after having my surgeries. I saved up all my sick time and my vacation. I took off 3 months and I went and had top and bottom surgery done at Duke University. And then I recovered for 8 weeks. And then I went and had 11 and a half hours of surgery done on my face. And I recovered for 6 more weeks and I went back to work at the plant. And so I tried everything that I could do to be prepared for any transphobia that I may have. And I had very little of it. The majority of what I received was a majority of the folks accepted me 100% as a woman and treated me as such. Honey, why don't you go sit in your office? This is men's work. And
Like, just turned on a dime.
yes, and that's why I say the loss of my male privilege, I had no idea. And the looking down my shirt and the hand in the small of the back, good morning, Olivia, how are you? And just the way people look at you. And I'd always heard this phrase growing up and through my years, and I've always heard moms say this to their daughters, be careful, honey, on your way home, don't make any eye contact. And I thought, what does that mean? No eye contact, what does that mean? And I learned in a very short period of time that if you catch eye contact with a man, he usually thinks you're interested, he's going to approach you. And so now you put yourself in danger. And so you just, why a lot of women walk around, hey, how are you? And then they kind of mind our business and we go do our thing. And it was kind of in the middle of my transition that I was dressing as me at nights and weekends, and I was still having to pretend to be this old person when I went to work. And I would stop and get gas as me. And there'd be a woman at the same island getting gas, and I would say, those are really cute shoes. And she's like, thank you. And we would just have a normal conversation. And then Monday morning, when I was dressed in boy clothes to go to work, and I'd see another woman, and I was like, oh my God, I love your shoes. And she would turn and walk the other way and shy away from me because I was presenting as male. And that's something that she needed to be, didn't feel safe from. The vulnerability absolutely rocked my world. I had no idea. I never in my entire life worried about walking out of a bar and walking down a dark alley at 3 o'clock in the morning. Never considered it as a problem at all. My time in the Navy, I've been to every single country that touched the North Atlantic Ocean, and I never worried walking out of some bar in some country, walking down some alleyway. I now make sure that I park on the streetlights. I now make sure that I've got my keys out. I now make sure that I know where I'm at, where I'm going, and how I'm going to get there. And I watch my surroundings. And I get in my car, and as soon as I shut my door, I lock the door. And I've never had that kind of fear. I've never had to worry about things like that. And it's something that as women, we have to do now. And so it's changed my entire thought process of how I see everything.
But you're not regret for 1 month.
Not 1 second. I am as happy now as I've ever been in my entire life. Hitting the lottery literally could not make me any happier. It probably changed my location. If I would be somewhere salty, sandy, and sunny, but it wouldn't change my happiness, because to be able to be your true authentic self, and I don't care whether that's you're a rock star or you're an attorney or you get to be me, whatever it is, whatever you decide that you want to be your true authentic self. When you come out as you, there's really nothing that can top that. There's nothing that can match that, to be able to say, and me. And especially for a trans person and all that we go through for the years of hard work. And I had a very short transition. I call my transition 5 years. Not everybody's quite as privileged as I was. So I used all of my savings. I robbed my 401k. I got a second mortgage to be able to pay for I paid for every bit of my surgeries and everything out of my own pocket. And it was a small fortune.
Does insurance pay for anything? like
Not a
that?
dime.
No, insurance doesn't
Some
pay for that.
states They do.
They say it's not medically necessary.
I have a family member in Washington.
Yes, sir.
State.
Oh, just a simple question.
Okay.
Did you change your profession or your employment? Or you, where
Um,
you continue?
Again, I can't really discuss that. All I can tell you is I'm retired from Vanderbilt University and I no longer work there.
Okay.
And I'm now in politics.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that, as a matter of fact. Is your message, has it been getting out there enough that you think that the whole Pride community for June is gonna know? And I mean, how's it going on in that?
Well, when they
What can we do?
announced it, you gotta be careful of what we can say, because I can't really speak to that. But to talk about what you're saying is when they sent me the email that said that I'm gonna be the Grand Marshal of Nashville Pride Parade, I literally sat on the floor and cried.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the highest honors somebody can get in the community. And so every single person that has ever been to the Nashville Pride Parade in any form in the last 25 years that used their email address got an email 2 weeks ago that Olivia Hill is one of the Grand Marshals, and they got a picture of me in my bio.
Does everybody in Nashville and surrounding area get to vote?
Everybody in Nashville can vote. That's legal to vote.
Okay, so
Which one's-
like my zip code out toward Hermitage, I got to vote too.
Oh, are we crossing that? Feel like we kind of,
Not to answer that question.
so yes, I'm running for at-large for all of Davidson County.
All right,
Which
so Davis
office?
County.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
You can ask.
All right, thanks.
For which office?
At large, council at large.
Oh, okay.
Nashville.
No, I won't,
Yeah, we're
I
not.
won't be able to vote anyway. I can- Cause
Yeah, I don't think we're really allowed to talk politics because this is a nonprofit, and so that's why I'm kind of trying to shy away from some of those questions. I don't want to get any of us in trouble.
Gotcha.
Yeah, well, you mentioned what what you do. And if he wants to help you in a personal way, that's
Yes,
his prerogative.
Yeah. I'm
We
speaking
we
personally.
can't,
I'll give him my business card. It has everything on it when we finish this.
Okay.
He's
sounds
already
good.
good help. Well, you've been really gracious with your time, because we asked you and thought, we would take half an hour of your time, and you're taking way longer than that, but thank you so much.
Well, thank you all so much for having me. I greatly appreciate this opportunity. Thank you all that's been there to watch me, and this really was supposed to be 30 minutes, and you know how politicians are, they don't ever shut up. So I just kept talking.
I don't think it was you, I think it was us.
Yeah. Thank you.